April 16, 1945. A forest outside Halbe, Germany. The world is made of mud and noise. For 20-year-old Luftwaffenhelferin Helga Schmidt, the symphony of her life has been reduced to two movements: the high-pitched shriek of incoming Soviet artillery and the guttural, earth-shaking reply of the German 88s. But now, the German guns are falling silent, one by one. The air, thick with the smell of pine sap and cordite, now carries a new scent, the metallic tang of defeat. Her post, a communications bunker dug into the forest floor, is a tomb of dead wires and silent radios. The static that crackles from the receiver is no longer a promise of orders, but an obituary for the Ninth Army. You can feel the vibration through the soles of your boots. Not the familiar shudder of friendly armor, but the relentless, rhythmic tread of the Red Army, closing the pocket. Helga and the three other women in her unit huddle together. Their gray-blue Luftwaffe uniforms are stained with dirt, their faces pale masks of exhaustion. One of them, a girl named Lotta, who is barely 18, is crying silently, her shoulders shaking. The unit's commanding NCO, a grim-faced Feldwebel with one arm in a sling, checks his Walther P-38 for the third time in as many minutes. He has a single round left. "They will not take us," he mutters, more to himself than to them. "The stories, you know the stories." They all know. For weeks, the radio, when it worked, had been a fountain of horror, broadcasting tales of what happened to German women in the East. The fear is a physical presence in the bunker, colder than the damp earth seeping through the floorboards. But then another sound cuts through the shelling, a metallic, clattering sound from the west, and shouting, not in Russian, in English. The Feldwebel's head snaps up. "Americans," he whispers, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Hope, or just a different kind of dread? The ground shakes again, and a spray of dirt falls from the timbered ceiling. The entrance to the bunker is just a dark rectangle against the chaos outside. A shadow falls across it, then another. "Kommen Sie raus! Hände hoch!" The voice is sharp, accented, but clear. "Come out, hands up." The Feldwebel makes his choice. The crack of the Walther is deafening in the small space. Lotta screams. Helga doesn't. She feels nothing, a hollowed-out vessel of shock. Two American soldiers, helmets low, M1 Garands held at the ready, fill the entrance. They are so young, their faces smudged with grime and fatigue, looking just as tired as she feels. One of them gestures with his rifle. "Out, now, raus." Helga stumbles out into the bruised daylight, her hands raised high. The forest is a Bosch painting of shattered trees and burning vehicles. The air is a cacophony of groaning wounded and American GIs yelling orders. She and the other two surviving women are herded into a line of disarmed Wehrluft soldiers, a river of gray uniforms flowing toward a collection point. The men around her are hollow-eyed, their faces a mixture of relief and shame. No one meets her gaze. They are no longer soldiers of the Reich, they are just cargo. You are pushed toward a GMC truck, its engine rumbling impatiently. A young American sergeant with a clipboard looks them over, his eyes lingering for a moment on the women. He says something to another soldier, who just shrugs. "A prisoner is a prisoner," the second one says, his voice flat. Helga understands the words. She learned some English in school, a lifetime ago. The simplicity of the phrase is chilling. She is no longer Helga Schmidt, communications auxiliary. She is a line on a manifest, a problem to be processed. As she is hoisted onto the back of the truck, her hand slips on the wet metal. For a terrifying second, she sees herself falling under the wheels. Then a firm hand grabs her arm and pulls her up. It's an American medic, his helmet marked with a red cross. He looks at her, his expression not of hate or lust, but of simple, weary professionalism. He says nothing, just helps the next person up. The engine roars, and the truck lurches forward, throwing the prisoners against each other. Helga stares out over the tailgate at the dissolving landscape of her homeland, a blur of fire and smoke. The stories about the Russians were nightmares made real. The stories about the Americans? No one had bothered to tell them any. She is heading west, into a void of total uncertainty, wondering if the Feldwebel in the bunker had the right idea after all. The collection point is a muddy field near the Elbe River, a purgatory of thousands. Here, the German army ceases to exist, dissolving into a mass of individuals stripped of rank, unit, and purpose. Helga and the other women are separated from the men, herded into a cordoned-off section under the watchful eyes of female American military police, WWIIs, whose crisp uniforms seem to mock their own filth-caked rags. The initial fear of immediate violence subsides, replaced by a creeping administrative dread. They are questioned, their names recorded in triplicate. Their few personal belongings, a photograph, a letter, are inspected and, more often than not, confiscated. For days, they wait. They sleep in crowded tents, the air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and fear. Rumors spread like a virus through the enclosure. They are being sent to France to rebuild cities. They are being sent to Siberia as part of a deal with the Soviets. They are being shipped to America to be sterilized. Each rumor is whispered with the certainty of gospel, each more terrifying than the last. The American guards are distant, efficient. They provide food, tins of sea rations that taste of chemicals and desperation, and water. There is no brutality, but there is no kindness either. There is only a profound, soul-crushing indifference. You become a number. Your identity is a tag tied to your wrist. Your world shrinks to the muddy ground beneath your feet and the barbed wire perimeter that seems to stretch to infinity. Then, one morning, the trucks return. They are loaded on, dozens at a time, and driven west, away from the sounds of the dying war. The journey takes them through the skeletal remains of German cities. Helga stares through the canvas flaps of the truck at the hollowed-out buildings of Magdeburg, at the blank-faced civilians who watch the convoy pass with a mixture of hatred and despair. This is the price of their failed crusade. This is the world their Führer built. The port at Bremerhaven is a chaos of ships and men. The air is sharp with the smell of salt and diesel fuel. They are marched up a gangplank onto a vast gray ship. A Liberty ship, one of the GIs calls it. It feels less like a ship and more like a floating warehouse, its metal plates welded together in haste, built for cargo, not people. Helga and hundreds of other women are led down into the cavernous hold. Rows of stacked bunks, 4 high, have been hastily installed. The air is stale, thick with the smell of paint and bilge water. The hatch clangs shut above them, plunging the hold into a dim, electric twilight. The darkness as absolute, a final seal on their old lives. The voyage across the Atlantic is a 2-week eternity. The ship groans and creaks with every swell of the ocean. For the first few days, nearly everyone is violently ill, the stench of vomit adding to the oppressive atmosphere. There is no day or night, only the monotonous routine of meals, a tasteless stew and hard biscuits, and the constant, gentle rocking of the deep. They are prisoners in a steel box, suspended between a continent they have lost and another they cannot imagine. They speak in low tones, clinging to the familiarities of their shared language. Some sing old folk songs, their voices thin and mournful in the echoing hold. Others, like Helga, remain silent, retreating into themselves. She spends hours staring at the rivets on the steel wall next to her bunk, tracing their patterns with her eyes. She thinks of her family in Dresden, wondering if they are alive. She thinks of the war, a monstrous machine that has consumed her youth and spit her out into this void. The propaganda that once gave her world meaning now seems like a fever dream. The invincible Wehrmacht, the 1,000-year Reich, all of it has crumbled into dust and been washed away by this gray, indifferent ocean. The Americans are phantoms. They bring the food, they patrol the catwalks above, but they do not speak. They are simply custodians of this floating prison. One morning, a new sensation filters down into the hold. A change in the rhythm of the engines, a subtle shift in the ship's motion. A murmur spreads through the women. A guard shouts down from the hatch, his voice distorted by the acoustics. "Land! We've sighted land!" Those who are able clamber from their bunks and press against the small sealed portholes, trying to catch a glimpse. Helga finds a spot, wiping the condensation from the thick glass. At first, there is only fog. Then it parts. A sliver of green on the horizon. Then a towering shape, a ghostly figure in the mist holding a torch. The Statue of Liberty. The women fall silent. This is it. This is America. It is not a place of nightmares, nor a land of promise. It is simply real, a massive, unreadable fact rising from the sea, waiting to swallow them whole. The train clatters south. For Helga, who has known only the tightly packed, war-torn geography of Central Europe, America is an exercise in impossible scale. After disembarking in New York and being processed through a facility with bewildering efficiency, she and her group were put on a passenger train. But it is not a prison train. There are no bars on the windows. There are armed guards, of course, posted at the end of each car, but they are relaxed, smoking cigarettes, their rifles slung casually over their shoulders. The women have been given new clothes. Simple, shapeless smocks of coarse blue denim, but they are clean. It's the first time Helga has felt truly clean in months. She presses her face against the cool glass of the window, watching the country unspool before her. It is a shock, a physical blow to her senses. She had expected to see a nation strained by war, its resources depleted, its people grim. The propaganda had insisted America was a fragile giant, decadent and rotten from within, ready to collapse. But the country outside her window is a vibrant, thrumming machine. She sees factories with smokestacks puffing contentedly into the sky, not belching the black smoke of destruction. She sees cities with streets full of automobiles, their chrome glinting in the sun. She sees towns where people walk without fear, their faces not etched with the permanent anxiety of war. You watch housewives hanging laundry in their backyards, children playing baseball in open fields, farmers driving tractors across plains of green and gold that seem to stretch to the edge of the world. There are no bomb craters, no rubble, no columns of refugees clogging the roads. The war that consumed her entire world is here a distant headline in a newspaper, a problem happening somewhere else. The sheer, unbothered prosperity of it all is a profound indictment of everything she was taught to believe. It is disorienting, like waking from a long and terrible dream, only to find that the real world is more unbelievable than the nightmare. The journey lasts for days. The train becomes a rolling microcosm of their new reality. They are given meals in a dining car, served by black porters whose polite, professional demeanor is another mystery to Helga, whose society was built on a rigid, violent racial hierarchy. The American landscape shifts from the industrial heartland of the north to the rolling hills and dense forests of the south. The air grows heavy, thick with a humidity that clings to her skin. The sun is hotter, more intense. Through the window, she sees small, unpainted wooden shacks and fields of cotton, a landscape of poverty unlike the industrial decay of Germany, but poverty nonetheless. She sees black field hands stopping their work to watch the train pass, their faces unreadable. Their destination is a place called Camp McCain, Mississippi. The name means nothing to her. When they finally arrive, they are marched from the station to a fleet of trucks. The heat is suffocating. The air buzzes with the sound of insects she has never heard before, a constant high-pitched thrum that seems to emanate from the very soil. The camp is vast, a sprawling city of single-story wooden barracks painted a drab olive green, all laid out in a precise military grid. It is surrounded by fences, of course. Tall fences topped with barbed wire, with guard towers punctuating the perimeter like sentinels. This, at least, is familiar. This is what a prison is supposed to look like. She and the other women are marched to a separate compound within the larger camp, also fenced off. They are assigned to a barracks, a long, open room filled with 24 simple metal cots. The windows are covered with screens, not bars. The air inside is stifling. An American officer, a WWII captain with a stern but not unkind face, addresses them through a German-speaking sergeant. "You are prisoners of war under the protection of the Geneva Convention," the sergeant translates, his voice flat and tired, as if he has given the speech 100 times. "You will be treated humanely. You are expected to obey the rules of this camp. Work details will be assigned. Your camp leader will be one of your own, elected by you. Any questions?" Silence. The women stare at him, their faces numb with exhaustion and confusion. Elected leader? Geneva Convention? These are just words, abstractions that have no meaning in the face of their reality. They are prisoners, thousands of miles from home, in a land that feels like another planet. That night, Helga lies on her cot, listening to the symphony of the Mississippi night. The chorus of cicadas and frogs is a sound of profound alienation. She can hear the faint sound of music from somewhere else in the camp, a jazzy tune from a radio, alien and carefree. She closes her eyes, but sleep will not come. She tries to hold on to the anger, the hatred, the rigid certainty of her old life, but it is slipping away, replaced by a vast and terrifying bewilderment. The first weeks in Camp McCain are a study in structured monotony. The days are governed by bells and whistles, wake up, roll call, meals, work details. Helga is assigned to the camp laundry, a sweltering building filled with steam and the smell of lye soap. She works alongside other German women, folding sheets and uniforms, the repetitive motion a kind of anesthetic for the mind. They speak little. The shock of their new circumstances has left them withdrawn, wary of each other, and deeply suspicious of their captors. The American Guards are a constant source of confusion. They are not the jackbooted thugs of Goebbels' caricatures. Most are older men, National Guardsmen deemed unfit for overseas combat, or young soldiers waiting for their own assignments. They carry their weapons loosely, they lean against fence posts, chewing tobacco or reading paperback novels. They are often bored. Their casual authority is more unnerving than outright brutality would have been. There is no menace in their eyes, only a kind of weary detachment. They enforce the rules, but they do not seem to enjoy it. One afternoon, during a break, Helga sits in the shade of the barracks, watching a guard toss a baseball back and forth with another soldier just outside the wire. They are laughing. The simple, uncomplicated sound of their laughter feels like a provocation. How can they be so carefree when her world has been burned to the ground? She feels a surge of the old familiar hatred. It is a comforting feeling, a shield against the confusion. They are the enemy. It is simple. But the simplicity is beginning to fray at the edges. As the officer had promised, the women are allowed to elect a Lagerführerin, a camp leader, to act as their liaison with the American authorities. They choose a former university administrator named Frau Adler, a stern, no-nonsense woman who insists on discipline but also demands their rights under the Geneva Convention. Helga watches, astonished, as Frau Adler argues with the American camp commandant, Captain Miller, about the quality of the bread or the need for more medical supplies. And Captain Miller listens. He doesn't always agree, but he listens. It is a negotiation, not a dictate. This is not how power is supposed to work. Then come the bulletin boards. Notices appear, typed in both German and English. A camp library is being established. Donations of German language books are being sought from local universities. An English class will be held on Tuesday and Thursday evenings in the mess hall. A choir is forming. A theater group is looking for members to stage a Schiller play. Helga reads the notices with deep cynicism. This is a trick, a re-education program designed to poison their minds, to turn them into collaborators. She sees some of the younger women, the ones who were barely out of school when the war began, looking at the notices with interest. Fools, she mutters to Lotte, the girl from the bunker who ended up in the same camp. They want to make us weak, to forget who we are. Lotte just shrugs, her eyes hollow. She has not truly been present since the Feldwebel shot himself. The real break comes on a Sunday afternoon. There are no work details on Sunday. The day is theirs, within the confines of the wire. The heat is oppressive, the air thick as a blanket. Helga is mending a tear in her denim smock when she hears it again. Laughter. Not the laughter of the American guards, but the laughter of German women. She looks up. Across the dusty compound, under a large oak tree, a group of a dozen women are sitting in a circle on the grass. One of them is telling a story, gesturing wildly with her hands. The others are leaning in, smiling, interjecting, laughing freely. You watch them, your needle frozen in mid-stitch, and you realize what is so strange, so profoundly impossible about the scene. There is no guard standing over them. Not a single American is watching. They are not in a line. They are not performing a task. They are simply talking, moving freely within the fenced area, unsupervised, unmolested. It is a small thing, a moment of casual community, but it strikes Helga with the force of a physical blow. In Germany, even before the war, life was a performance of loyalty. Every word was weighed, every neighbor a potential informant. In the Luftwaffe, discipline was absolute. Unsupervised assembly was forbidden. Freedom was a privilege granted by the state for its own purposes. It was never, ever a casual assumption. How is this possible? The question echoes in her mind, a genuine, painful inquiry. Why would the enemy, the victors, allow this? Why would they permit even this small island of autonomy? It serves no military purpose. It is inefficient. It is, by the standards of her entire life, an act of inexplicable carelessness. She looks from the laughing women to the distant guard in his tower, who is staring out at the Mississippi landscape, not at them. For the first time, the shield of her hatred feels not like protection, but like a blindfold. She glances toward the mess hall, where the sign for the library is posted. A thought, terrifying and insistent, takes root in her mind. Perhaps the world is not as simple as she has been told. The decision to walk into the library feels like a betrayal. The library is just a corner of a storage barracks, a few dozen shelves of mismatched books smelling of dust and mildew. But to Helga, it is enemy territory. She stands in the doorway for a long moment, her heart pounding. Other women are already inside, browsing the shelves with a quiet reverence. She sees books by authors banned and burned by the Reich: Thomas Mann, Erich Maria Remarque, Stefan Zweig. Seeing their names in print feels like a transgression. A fellow prisoner, a woman who was a nurse in Hamburg, is acting as the librarian. She gives Helga a small, encouraging smile. "There is a primer," she says softly in German, "if you wish to improve your English." She points to a small stack of children's schoolbooks. Helga hesitates, then picks one up. Fun with Dick and Jane. The cover shows two smiling, impossibly clean children playing with a dog. It is a portrait of a world so alien, so peaceful, it feels like a fantasy. She takes the book back to her cot and, in the privacy of the evening, begins to sound out the strange, simple words. See, spot, run. She does not attend the formal English class, not at first. It is too public a concession, but she listens. She listens to the guards speaking to each other. She listens to the announcements over the camp loudspeaker. She matches the words she hears with the words in the primer. Slowly, painfully, the architecture of a new language begins to form in her mind. It is a secret project, a way of understanding the mechanics of her prison without admitting to herself that she is changing. The theater group puts on its first performance, an abridged version of Schiller's Mary Stuart. They build a makeshift stage in the mess hall. The costumes are fashioned from old potato sacks and bedsheets. The American camp authorities not only allow it, they attend. Captain Miller and several of his officers sit in the back row, watching the German play with polite, if baffled, attention. Helga watches from the shadows, amazed at the audacity of it all. They are performing a classic of German literature, a story of defiance and tragedy for their captors. And their captors are applauding. The world has tilted on its axis. One day, working in the laundry, Helga cuts her hand on a stray pin hidden in a uniform. It is a deep gash, and it bleeds profusely. She is sent to the camp infirmary. An American Army doctor, a major with gray hair and tired eyes, stitches the wound with practiced efficiency. Through a translator, he asks her questions, not about the war, not about her politics, but if she has had a tetanus shot, if she feels faint. He treats her injury with the same detached professionalism he would afford an American soldier. As he finishes, he looks at her, really looks at her for the first time. "You'll have a scar," he says simply, his English words slow and clear enough for her to understand without the translator. But it will heal. The simple human statement pierces her defenses. He is not seeing a Luftwaffenhelferin. He is not seeing an enemy combatant or a Nazi ideologue. He is seeing a young woman with a wounded hand. In that moment, the entire edifice of impersonal hatred she has clung to for years develops a fatal crack. The enemy has a human face. The news of Germany's final surrender on May 8th arrives without ceremony. It is announced over the loudspeaker. A strange, heavy silence falls over the women's compound. There is no weeping, no overt despair. The end had been coming for so long that its arrival is merely a confirmation. Their world is officially over. They are now citizens of a country that no longer exists, prisoners of a war that is finished. They are ghosts. That evening, Helga sits outside, the Dick and Jane book forgotten in her lap. The Mississippi sky is a riot of purples and oranges. From the men's compound, she can hear the sound of a choir singing a Brahms lullaby, the harmony beautiful and heartbreakingly sad. She thinks of the doctor's words, "It will heal." She looks down at the white bandage on her hand. She knows the wound beneath is closing, the flesh knitting itself back together. But the other wounds, the ones she cannot see, the scars on her soul, on her mind, on her entire generation. She looks up at the barbed wire, glinting in the last light of the day. For months, she has seen it as the symbol of her captivity. But now, for the first time, she wonders. Inside this wire, she has witnessed something she never could have imagined. A freedom, however limited, that was not granted from the top down, but which grew in the spaces in between. The freedom to gather, to learn, to create, to speak. It was a messy, inefficient, and deeply confusing system. It was not the rigid, terrifying order she had always known. And as the first stars began to appear in the foreign sky, Helga Schmidt, prisoner of war, felt a terrifying and unfamiliar sensation begin to stir within her. It was not hope, not yet. It was possibility.